Okay, Hare Krishna, everyone. Good evening, and welcome to our Gita Gyan Essence of the Bhagavad Gita course. And this is day 7. So we have finished the first 6 chapters, and you can divide Bhagavad Gita into 3 sections: first 6 chapters, middle 6 chapters, and the last 6 chapters. So the first 6 chapters is basically setting the path, outlining what is the issue, understanding that we are the soul, and then setting us towards the path of getting out of this material world. And the next 6 chapters, starting from chapter 7 all the way to chapter 12, this will outline the goal, the ultimate goal. And then, so in that way, we will go progressively, section by section. So dedicated to His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, founder Acharya of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. Join me with the prayer. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamin Iti Namine. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Sri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vigna Vinasha Narasimhaiti Namini Mukam Varoti Vachalam Pangum Langaitim Girim Yat Kripa Tamaham Vande Sri Guru Dinatarinam Paramananda Madhavam Sri Chaitanyam Ishwaramam Tatsat. So I'd like to introduce you to our another deity which we have in our temple. So these are called the Utsava deities, very small deities. Utsava deity means festival. So you know the festival deities are usually the deities which are taken to do abhishek, and you know they bring the deities about. So that's what they're called, Utsava deities. So they are Radha Gokulananda, Shri Radha Gokulananda. So we have already met our other 2 sets of deities, Sri Jagannath Baladev Subhadra and Sri Nitai Sundar Gaurahari. Okay, so Gita Mahatmya. Ekam Shastram Devaki Putram. Is there any way to remove these lines? Just a moment. Okay. Done. Ekam Shastram Devaki Putra Gitam Eko Devo Devaki Putra Eva Eko Mantrastasya Namamiyani Karmapi Ekam Tasya Devasya Sheva. This is Gita Mahatmya. We are continuing, right? The last 6 verses we have finished. Now this is the 7th verse. And it's the last verse. So in this verse, the translation is, this is written by Sripad Sankaracharya. There need be only one holy scripture, the divine Gita, sung by Lord Sri Krishna. Ekam Shastram. That means let there be only one Shastra. And what Shastra is there? Devaki Putra Gitam. The Gita sung by the son of Devaki. And let there be only Eko Devo, only one worshipable Lord, Sri Krishna. Again, Eko Devo, Devaki Putra Eva. Only one mantra, Eko Mantras, Tasya Namami Yani, his holy names. And only one duty, karmapi ekam, tasya devasya seva. His holy name, the only one duty is devotional service unto that supreme worshipable Lord, Sri Krishna. So this is, it echoes another beautiful verse from the Srimad Bhagavatam. So I thought I'd just mention that as well. This verse, Yata Taror Mula Nisechanena Tripyanti Tat Skanda Bujo Pasakha Pranapho Farakcha Yatendriyananam Tataiva Sarvahanam Achyuteja. Translation is, as pouring water on the root of a tree energizes the trunk, branches, twigs, and everything else, and just as supplying food to the stomach enlivens the senses and limbs of the body, therefore, similarly, simply worshipping the Supreme Personality of Godhead through devotional service automatically satisfies the demigods who are parts of that Supreme Personality. So it said there are 330 million devatas, and each of them has some activity in which they control this universal, this material universe. For example, rain is provided by Indra, good health and sunlight is provided by Surya. So like that, there are different devas who are in charge of different aspects. Even someone in charge for digestion, Agni. So like that, and according to our karma and our desire, we will be given our allotted share. So here it says that simply by worshipping, by following this advice, right? Only one duty, devotional service to the Supreme. This duty is so powerful that simply by doing this duty, there is no sin in not doing any other duty. So therefore, we have priority of duty, dharma, priority, higher priority. So a higher dharma, which is taken, it's all right to take a higher dharma and abandon a lower dharma. So that is what this verse is saying. So therefore, the devotional service, worship of the Supreme Lord, is sufficient to satisfy all the other devatas. There's no need to do separate puja. Otherwise, we will not be able to cover 330 million, right? So that's the thing. It's like the tree. You pour the water to the root, the entire tree with these innumerable branches and leaves and twigs, they are all nourished. So in the same way. So the root of that tree is Sri Krishna. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we will look at chapter 6, which we covered yesterday. So very quickly, these are some of the topics, the subtopics which was discussed. Okay, so the true yogi was discussed. Why the true yogi? Because we want to differentiate between the false yogi, one who is artificially renounced, but always thinking about sense gratification in his mind. So that can only happen when jnana is awakened in one's heart through the execution of duty eventually. So that is the true yogi. And then we talked about the next point was dhyana. So here Krishna is going in more detail about the Ashtanga yoga or dhyana yoga. So this is coming from the difficult path. Two paths in yoga, the easy path and the difficult path. So he's now completing the stages in the difficult path. He's just highlighting to Arjuna, after jnana yoga, the next level, the knowledge should result in one looking for the Paramatma. So therefore, this is the search for the Paramatma, and this was highlighted yesterday. And later, after hearing all this from Krishna, Arjuna says, it's such a difficult path. I don't think I'm able to do this. Easier for me to control the wind than to control my mind using this kind of methods. So Krishna says, yes, it's difficult. And then he said, that's why I've been trying to tell you to follow the other path. But nevertheless, it is possible to follow this path also, right? How? By suitable detachment and two things, knowledge and practice. Practice and detachment. These two will make it possible. But we discussed also how this dhyana path wasn't very suitable to be done in this age, because it would require their do's and don'ts. If you remember, yam and niyam, right? Do's and don'ts. One has to go to a secluded place, one has to go to a holy place, and then one has to prepare a seat, and then one has to sit in that seat for hours, for days, and then without fear. So there are a number of things, and one has to be celibate. So, and these things are predominantly practiced in Satya Yuga. But still Krishna is addressing these points. And then towards, he says, at last they will achieve if they follow this path. But then he tells Arjuna, my recommendation for you is you don't follow the dhyana path, because whatever that can be achieved from the dhyana path can also be achieved automatically simply by performing bhakti. So therefore he says in the end, and in his opinion, the greatest of all yogis is not the yogi who is able to have mystic powers and all that. So here he is, the last verse, if you remember, 647. I'll just put it here again. And of all yogis, the one with great faith, who always abides in me, thinks of me within himself, and renders transcendental loving service to me. So basically, it's describing the bhakta, right? The devotee who is following devotional service. He is the most intimately united with me in yoga and is the highest of all. So this we understood from the previous chapter. So Krishna is telling Arjuna, you have nothing to lose. Why take a difficult path when you can, by taking the path of bhakti, easily achieve the supreme? And not only that, you will achieve the highest perfection. So what is this highest perfection? So it looks like when in this verse, when he says the highest of all, it looks like there are several levels of perfection. So that will be discussed today. What are these several levels of perfection? So it's just like the example we gave, the story about Ambarish Maharaj and Durvasa Muni, if you remember, how Durvasa Muni he committed an offense, but he was so powerful. He had all kinds of powers. He was able to create a demon from the knot of his hair just by the power of his mantra. He was able to go to different planets, different lokas, different heavenly kingdoms, and even beyond. So in this way, he was able to travel at the speed of his mind. So, but still, bhakta was even greater. This Durvasa Muni could not in any way do anything to Ambarish Maharaj, because he was completely under the protection of the Supreme Lord, who is called infallible, Achyuta. One of the names of the Lord is Achyuta. Achyuta means infallible. He never fails. And why is he called infallible? He's called infallible because it means he never fails in saving or protecting his devotees. So that is what it means, Achyuta. Okay. I think there's some sound. Someone is, okay, now. So the key takeaways were: be a yogi. And then to be a yogi, it requires practice and detachment, which will follow along as we are performing the practices. And then we also understood how dhyana yoga is impractical in this age. It's possible maybe for 1% of the population, but it is definitely practically not doable by 99.9%. And in the end, anyway, she says, being a bhakta, a devotee, is even higher the achievement. So therefore, take that path, Arjuna. Krishna is telling. So today we go to the next chapter, knowledge of the absolute. It's called Jnana Vijnana Yoga. Now, earlier chapter 4 was also called Jnana Yoga. That means it's about knowledge, Jnana. Now, the difference between jnana and vijnana means realized knowledge. So, jnana already is knowledge. Vijnana means realized, that knowledge which has been used to attain. So, therefore, the translation is knowledge of the absolute, to attain that absolute. First, we have the absolute knowledge, and then we can talk about attaining it. So it begins like this. Sri Bhagavan Uvacha Mai Ashakta Mana Partha Yogam Yunjan Mad Ashrayaha Asamshayam Samagram Mam Yatadnyasya Tachrinu. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, now hear, O son of Pritha, how by practicing yoga in full consciousness of me, with mind attached to me, you can know me in full, free from doubt. So here Krishna begins to tell Arjuna about the process of Bhakti Yoga. So it will all culminate in chapter 12. So step by step, each chapter. And beyond that, if in chapter 4, Krishna started to reveal his supreme position. You remember the verse Janma Karma Chami Divyam, and then in chapter 5 he also talked about Bhuktaram Yajna Tapasham Sarvaloka Maheshwaram. So this verse all we covered previously. So now in chapter 7 onwards, he completely starts revealing the full aspect about his supreme divinity. And ultimately it concludes in chapter 11 about how he reveals his full position. So we are going to hear. So now it says, now here. Now why this is important here? Because in devotional practice, in Bhakti Yoga, there are 9 processes of devotional practice. We will talk about that later in other chapters in detail. But amongst these 9 processes, it begins, the devotional seva begins with the first step, the first process, which is called Shravanam. Shravanam means hearing, to hear. So that's the first step. By simply hearing about the glories of the Supreme Lord, by simply hearing about his leelas, that means his pastimes, by simply hearing about his relationship with his devotees, by simply hearing about his devotees and his greatness and how he controls the entire world with his different energies, all this hearing is actually devotional service. It begins with that, and that actually works very powerfully to purify our heart. So in those days, people used to hear Ramayana, people used to hear Mahabharata, people used to hear Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita. So this was the pastime those days. So but nowadays this is no longer so, because of all the TV and the Netflix and all that. But still, in our society, we are one of the things we stress upon is hearing. So that's how the Maha Mantra works also. By chanting Hare Krishna, we are hearing our own chanting. And we are hearing what actually? We are hearing the holy names of the Supreme Lord. So it begins by hearing. So, O son of Pritha, how by practicing yoga in full consciousness of me? So this is obviously Bhakti Yoga. So Krishna is now talking about Bhakti Yoga, no longer about the Jnana path. So now he's talking about the Bhakti path fully. With mind attached to me, so by practicing Bhakti, the mind can automatically be attached to the Supreme Lord. So what actually is Bhakti Yoga? Bhakti Yoga is very simply described as the process of falling in love with the Supreme Lord. That is what the process is. It can be done. So it doesn't matter. It was done in the past. Many personalities, simply by hearing about the Lord, fell in love with the Lord. So, for example, Rukmini is one example. Now, Rukmini never met Krishna. She only heard about Krishna from her minister. And her minister will talk about, he was actually promised to marry another person called Sishupal. But she, as she was growing up, she always heard about the pastimes of Krishna from her minister. And in this way, by hearing and hearing, she developed attachment, and attachment developed. So the levels of devotion increased until it came to a level where it blossomed into prema. So when the ultimate level of love of God is attained, that's called prema. It's different compared to the normal love that we understand. Prema is very, very high. So in that way, simply by hearing, it's possible. So you can know me in full, free from doubt. So Rukmini did this, and she completely fell in love with the Lord simply by hearing his pastimes and his qualities and his nature and his descriptions. And she didn't want to marry Shishupal. And Lord Krishna understood her desire because he's Paramatma in everybody's heart. And straight away, he went to rescue her. And so next, 7.2. This verse, I shall now declare unto you in full this knowledge. What knowledge is he talking about? He's talking about the knowledge of getting out of this, the ultimate duty of the jiva, of the soul, getting out of this material existence and going beyond. So what is that beyond? That all will be discussed in later chapters, right? So I'm going to declare unto you in full. So previously it was, two parts were discussed, both phenomenal and numinous. This being known, nothing further shall remain for you to know. Now, this doesn't mean that there's nothing else to know. It means that this is the ultimate goal. He is now going to discuss the ultimate goal. And he will spend the next 6 chapters talking about this ultimate goal. And that's the idea here. Manushyanam shahasreshu kaschid yatati siddhaye yatatam api siddhanam kaschin mam vedi tattvataha. Out of many thousands among men, one may endeavor for perfection. And of those who have achieved perfection, hardly one knows me in truth. So again, Krishna is hinting about how there are different levels of perfection. So you can see this verse, of those who have achieved perfection, hardly one knows me in truth. So there are, from this we can understand perfection, which is basically attaining God, has several levels of it. And this is also corroborated by other scriptures as well. So how to understand this? Let me give a simple example, which is described in the Shvetasvatara Upanishad and also in the Mundaka Upanishad, and also in several other Upanishads. It's also in the Ishopanishad and Srimad Bhagavatam. So the supreme truth or the ultimate attainment of God can be described in 3 ways, just like how we talk about sun. For example, when we look up into the sky in the daytime, when there are clouds and all that, we cannot see the sun, but we see light. Everywhere is light. It's called ambient light, isn't it? So therefore, the first level of perfection is to come out of darkness and to be situated in light, complete ambient light. So therefore, it's called Jyoti. Jyoti means light. And this Jyoti has a name. It's called Brahma Jyoti or Brahman. So it's like the sunlight, right? But those people in the Brahma Jyoti, just like how we see sunlight everywhere, but the clouds may cover the sun. So we do not know we know there is a sun, but we can't see the sun. So beyond that, there is, once the clouds disperse, then we can see the sun. We can see that this Jyoti or this light has a source. Where does this light come from? We talk about light. Any light that we know also has a source, isn't it? Where it comes either from the light bulb or comes from the fire or comes from the sun. So therefore, we can see that the sunlight has a source, which is the sun. And similarly, the Brahma Jyoti also has a source. And it's like the sun. But those who understand even further, the most perfect realization is, now from looking at this, we can hardly see what the sun looks like. But we understand the sun is a fiery planet, right? And within that sun, there is a deity of the sun. which actually the sun is blazing. It's basically the effulgence which is blazing coming from the sun god or Surya, right? So that's the understanding. So similarly, in perfection also, there are three levels of perfection or three levels of God realization. So the first level of God realization is called Brahman. So this is something where by practice of Jnana Yoga, one attains that level of Brahman simply by knowledge. So this is also attainable easily from the devotional perspective, from the Bhakti Yoga. But this is basically the first level of attainment, Brahman. Then beyond Brahman, once we know that sun is basically, light comes from the sun. So that is actually even higher realization. So that is called Paramatma realization. So the Ashtanga yogi or the Dhyana yogi who practices meditation, he is able to see that that Brahma Jyoti is actually has a form. It's not just light. The light has a source, and the localized source of this light is within our own heart and within the heart of every living entity, and is situated together with us, next to us, as the Paramatma. So therefore it's called Paramatma realization. So this is the so there's something called perfect, more perfect, and most perfect. So this is more perfect, the second level of God realization attained by the Dhyana yogis. But the most perfect realization of the Supreme Lord or of the Supreme is, according to this verse here, this is from the Ishopanishad, the king of all the Upanishads, of the 108 Upanishads. Hiranmayena patrena satyasya pihitam mukam tattvam pushan apavranu satya dharmaya dristaye. O my Lord, your real face is covered by your dazzling effulgence. Kindly remove that covering and exhibit yourself to your pure devotee. So this verse basically says, reveal that. So the Brahman is basically the effulgence, the light. So the light covers, we cannot see the sun with our naked eyes directly. So, but the pure devotees, the Bhakti yogis, are able to see the ultimate form of the Supreme Lord. This is not the localized form. The localized form is everywhere, but it all comes from one single source. All this Paramatma comes from one single source, and that is called the Bhagavan realization. So there's another verse here. This is also from the Ishopanishad. It says, "O my Lord, please remove the effulgence of your transcendental rays so that I can see your form of bliss. You are the eternal supreme personality of Godhead, like unto the sun as I am." So again, the example of the sun here, right? So this is basically Bhagavan realization, the topmost perfected attainment of the Supreme. So remember, there is Brahman, there is Paramatma, and there is Bhagavan. So just like sun rays, sun, and the deity of the sun. So the deity of the sun is the source of all the others. From the deity of the sun, for example, from the Supreme Bhagavan, he expands himself into innumerable Paramatmas and enters into every atom, space in between atom, and accompanies the living entity in his journey. So that is Paramatma. And the effulgence of this Bhagavan is the Brahmajyoti, is the light. So here's another way of understanding it. So God realization, right? The first stage is Brahman. And let's see, there are these types of yogis. There is the Jnana yogi, the Dhyana yogi, and the Bhakti yogi. So there's also Karma yogi, but the Karma yogi hasn't attained Brahman yet. The Karma yogi has to move to the next stage of Jnana yoga, and from there, if he has perfected Jnana yoga, he is able to attain Brahman when he dies. So that is Jnana yogi. Okay, But that is just the first level. And Brahman, the feature of Brahman is Sat. Sat means eternal. So he has attained an eternal position. He knows that he is eternal, and he knows that Brahman is eternal. He is also part of that Brahman. He is part of that eternal nature, and therefore he is liberated, free from matter, free from karma, and he just remains there. That is Brahman realization. And it's attainable by the Jnana Yogi. But when the Jnana Yogi advances further and he becomes a Dhyana Yogi at the next level, then the Dhyana Yogi, the successful Dhyana Yogi, he will attain Paramatma realization, even higher than Brahman. So Paramatma has the quality of Sat, which Brahman has. Sat is basically Nirguna. It's formless. So there's no quality there. It's just eternal, and there is no shape, no form, nothing. It's just light. That's Brahman. But beyond Brahman, Paramatma has two qualities, Sat and Chit. Sat is eternal. Chit is full of knowledge. So that's why Paramatma, he is cognizant of every single activity. Anywhere and along the world, it's like he knows everything that's going on in everybody's mind. He knows everything that's happening in every location in this universe or in any universe. So that's Paramatma. So yogi who connects to Paramatma, he is also able to access this Chit potency, Sat and Chit. So at the time of death, he will also attain Brahman, but at a higher level, Paramatma, more perfect. So this is done by the Dhyana yogis. But the Bhakti yogis, they are able to straight away attain Bhagavan realization. Now Bhagavan here you can see, this is the form of the Lord, the ultimate supreme form of the Lord. It's called Swayam Bhagavan. So Krishna, Swayam Bhagavan. Krishnastu Swayam Bhagavan. This is a verse from the Srimad Bhagavatam. So what are the components of Swayam Bhagavan? It has Sat, he has Chit, he also is Ananda. Ananda means ultimate bliss. He is relishing ever increasing bliss. So a Bhakti Yogi who is able to attach himself there to Bhagavan, the Ananda which he is experiencing in Bhagavan is unlimitedly, undescribably greater than whatever mukti that he is attaining in Brahman level. So that is Bhagavan level. So we can understand these three stages of God realization. So that's why Krishna keeps saying into Arjuna, the highest perfection, nobody knows me, even though amongst all perfected souls. So perfected souls are all these three are all perfected souls. Jnana, Dhyana, and Bhakta. But only the rare Bhakti, the Bhakti Yogi, is able to know the full aspect of Bhagavan. So that's what Krishna was saying in the earlier verse in Bhagavad Gita. So if you notice, the Jnana Yogi and the Dhyana Yogi, both of these is coming from the Jnana path, the path of the difficult path, which I mentioned, the Jnana path. Whereas the Bhakti Yogi alone is able to access the highest level, which is from the Bhakti path. So there is a difference. So therefore, Krishna was saying, if you remember this particular verse, let me show you that verse. Right. Here he says, I shall now declare unto you fully this knowledge. So this full knowledge is only understood by the devotees. And here also it says, hardly one knows me in truth. Amongst those who have achieved perfection, hardly one knows me in truth. So only the devotee who's able to fully appreciate the Bhagavan level. Okay. So coming back to here. Okay. So now we may ask this question, why is Bhagavan realization necessary? Isn't perfect good enough for us? There is perfect, more perfect, and most perfect. So firstly, to attain Brahman and Paramatma, this is done by the Jnana path, which is firstly more difficult. Whereas the bhakti path, apparently it's easier, but it has a very heavy sacrifice to pay. And that sacrifice, we will talk about it in chapter 12. It sounds heavy, but actually it is a simple path, but it requires a very important sacrifice point, which we will talk about in later chapters. But that bhakti yogi alone can attain this Bhagavan. So Bhagavan realization is necessary because we can show here. Why Bhagavan realization is necessary? Because Svetashvatara Upanishad gives us a clue. I know that Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is transcendental to all material conceptions of darkness. Only he who knows him can transcend the bonds of birth and death. There is no way for liberation other than this knowledge of that Supreme Person. So this verse clearly talks about the Bhagavan realization, about that Supreme Person, right? That means the Bhagavan realization. So ultimately, if we want to permanently keep a stop to cycle of birth and death, that means one has to achieve Bhagavan realization. Because even in Brahman realization, we may be free of the cycle of birth and death. We are now free from the cycle of birth and death. It's like someone in prison, you know. When someone comes out of prison, he's free. So that is like as if he has attained Brahman. Oh, I'm free. So Brahman basically means, another word for that is moksha. Moksha means liberated, free. So that's all it is, freedom. Now, freedom might sound very sweet to a person who has been in the prison for a very, very long time. But that sweetness cannot compare to positive pleasure. So it is just an absence of misery. That freedom is just an absence of misery. He is not engaged in anything positive. For example, he comes out of prison, but he is not engaged. He doesn't have a job, or he doesn't have any relationship. He doesn't know anybody. So he comes out of prison, he's free, right? That doesn't give him positive pleasure or positive happiness. So it's just minus the misery, that's all. So whereas Bhagavan realization is complete service, devotional service to the Supreme Lord, and by this connection, one attains extreme pleasure, Ananda. So we will talk about that later in later chapters in detail. So here it gives that clue. So it's only that positive engagement which will completely save one from taking cycle of birth and death. So let's recap again what we have talked so far. So 7.1 to 7.3, it basically clarifies about the topmost realization. So we have heard about the 3 levels of God realization. Verse 1, knowing God in full. Verse 2, the last word in that realization is Bhagavan realization. And verse 3 talks about how rare it is. Not everybody is able to achieve. This is amongst those who are perfected. So how rare it is. Okay. And then from verse 4 all the way to verse 12, Krishna will begin to more and more reveal his ultimate position, because he's now talked about the ultimate realization, Bhagavan. Once you speak about Bhagavan, then we want to know about Bhagavan. What is Bhagavan? What are his qualities? So therefore, Krishna will reveal his supreme position here. So there is a verse in the Sri Brahma Samhita. This is a prayer offered by Brahma to Govinda, Lord Krishna. Ishvara Parama Krishna Satchitananda Vigraha Anadiradir Govinda Sarvakarana Karanam. Translation is Ishvara Parama Krishna. Krishna, Ishvara Parama, the supreme Ishvara, the supreme controller, Krishna, and he has a Vigraha, that means he has a form. So the ultimate realization of God is that God has a form. The first level is Brahman, where it is Nirguna. Nirguna means no qualities or without form. Then comes Paramatma level, where we understand there is form, but there are many localized forms. And there is no Leela, there is no relationship in terms of seva. It is simply realization of the Paramatma in our heart. But the ultimate realization of Bhagavan is that he has a form He has Nama, Rupa, Guna, Leela. Nama, name, Nama, Rupa, form, Guna, qualities. And though it is Nirguna, this is spiritual qualities. He doesn't have material qualities, so therefore he's Nirguna, but he has spiritual qualities. And Nama, Guna, Rupa, Leela. That is the most important point, Leela. So that is the relationship. Leela means pastimes. Pastime and relationship between the devotee, the sweet reciprocation between the devotee and the Supreme Lord. So Satchit Ananda Vigraha, he has a form. And what kind of form he has? Sat. His form is full of Sat. Sat means eternal. Chit. Chit means full of knowledge, and Ananda, full of bliss. Remember, I said Brahman has Sat potency, Paramatma has Sat and Chit potency, but it's Bhagavan that has Sat, Chit, and Ananda potency, all three. Anadir Adir Govinda, he is the origin of all. Anadir Adir, origin of all. And who is that? Govinda. He is also Sarva Karana Karanam, the cause of all causes. So this is the realization of Brahmaji. So based on that verse, Krishna will also again establish that clearly from 7.7 to 7.12. So this is a very famous verse also. Mata parataram nanyat kinchid asti dhananjaya mai sarvam idham protam shutre mani gana iva. O conqueror of wealth, Dhananjaya, that's Arjuna, there is no truth superior to me. So Krishna is declaring here, there's nothing beyond me. So that there's nothing beyond Bhagavan realization. Everything rests upon me as pearls are strung on a thread. Just like how you can see pearls, you can see the pearl, but you cannot see the thread. So in the same way, the entire universe, the planets are all in orbit. Everything is moving perfectly within this world. The earth is rotating, the sun is rotating, the moon is turning. Everything is moving perfectly within this world, but the hand of the Lord is invisible. So in the same way, the pearls are strung, but it is the thread that which is holding all of them. So Krishna confirms this over here. So very, very famous verse here. And then it goes on like that all the way to 7.12. So we just talked about one of those verses. So basically, what are the other points that he covers? So I've summarized these points all the way to 7.12. So Krishna talks about the various energies that he has. Krishna has innumerable energy. He is served by his energy. He's Yogeshwara. Yeah? So he has lots of energy serving him. So he cannot count. It's like the waves crashing on the shore. The number of energies that he has cannot be counted. But it can be categorized. So he talks about that, but we won't discuss this in level 1. We will discuss the energies of Krishna in detail in level 2. And how these energies work to create this material world, to support the Leela pastimes and all these things. So then Krishna goes on, this verse we already heard, 7.7, there's no truth superior to me. He also continues that in 7.8. And then he starts to give analogies just to help us understand the ultimate supreme position of the Lord and how he is very subtly present in many, many things. So therefore, he gives some examples, analogies, for us to try to understand the ultimate point of the Supreme Lord. So these analogies I have also summarized. He talks from 7.9 all the way to 7.11. So this is some of the things that he says. He says, I am the taste of water. So to a thirsty person, or to a person who's extremely thirsty, water is the most tastiest beverage in the world, right? So the taste of water. So whenever we drink water, the taste of water, we can remember Krishna, because Krishna mentions this in the Bhagavad Gita. I am the light of the sun and the moon. What is the value of the sun or the moon if it doesn't have light, right? So therefore, I am that. light of the sun and the moon. So he's giving example and analogy to show that he is the ultimate in everything. I am the syllable Om. So amongst all sound, the syllable Om is the topmost sound. So he says, I am that Om. So when we say Om, we are referring to the ultimate supreme personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, in sound form. I am sound in ether. So amongst the Panchabhutas means the 5 elements: earth, water, fire, air, and ether. Ether is the finest. What is this ether? Ether is called Akash. So it's like, cyberspace. So how the internet works, how phone, how we have waves, how waves travel in space. We have alpha waves, but beta waves, gamma waves. We have like that, how waves travel. So it travels through the medium called ether. So this is, we have applied this, modern scientists have applied this already, but they don't understand that the element which is using is called ether. So he says, ether, in ether, I'm the sound in ether. So that's the ultimate aspect of ether. So this Om, it can travel through sound in space in the form of wave. And he says, I am the ability in man. And he goes to say, I am the fragrance of the earth. I am the heat in fire. And I am the life of all that lives. So basically, in this way, we can understand this ultimate position of the Supreme. So he begins by this. Later on in chapters 10 and 11, he will go in more detail about how we can begin to understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Bhagavan. I am the penances of all ascetics. So that means if anybody is performing any tapasya or austerity, or sacrifices, he's saying, I am that sacrifice. I am that penance. So like that, he goes on. These are the main ones which I've captured. And then in 7:12, he also says, I am the master of the 3 modes. Now, if you remember in one of the chapters earlier, we introduced to you how the material world works under these 3 modes, including ourselves, our activities, our actions. It's all colored by these 3 modes: the mode of goodness, sattva, the mode of passion, rajas, and the mode of ignorance, tamas. So he says, I am the master of these 3 modes. So in this way, he's giving us more and more understanding. And then he tells, not everybody is able to understand me, Arjuna. Krishna will tell, Namam duskritino mudda prapadyante naradamaha mayaya paharta jnana ashuram bhavam ashritaha. Those miscreants who are grossly foolish, who are lowest among mankind. So grossly foolish means duskritino, miscreants. People who don't follow scriptural injunctions, people who don't perform sacrifice, people who simply take what they want and expect everything to work their way. So duskritino mudda, foolish. Mudda means foolish. Who are lowest among mankind. Naradamaha. Nara means man. So the lowest, Adama. Adama means the lowest amongst men. Whose knowledge is stolen by illusion. They may be very learned, but they just cannot understand certain things about the supremacy of the Supreme Lord. So Maya paharta jnana, their knowledge, jnana, is stolen, paharta, by Maya, illusion. And the type of people who are ashuram, bhavam, that means who have demonic nature or atheistic nature. So a lot of bad qualities. So these people cannot understand me, Arjuna, Krishna says. So, for example, here we have examples of Naradama. So we just like to give some examples. So the Muddha are grossly foolish. Grossly foolish people means people who will simply go on doing. Like example is given like the donkey. Now the donkey can eat fresh grass all around it, but it's not in. But the man will trick the donkey to show the carrot in front of the donkey. And in this way, the donkey becomes the slave of the carrot, although it knows there is grass everywhere. So this is like an example of a Buddha, someone who is workaholic, who works and works and works. He has taken a human life. So like a donkey, he just simply works and he doesn't know anything beyond work. So there are a lot of people like that these days. When they retire, they don't know what to do. So they come into depression, they develop, all kinds of mental issues, and then their health degenerates because they don't have a goal in life. So they end up doing frivolous things. And in this way, they live their life in vain towards the last part of their life. So this is happening because they do not know the higher goal of life. There's so much to do. And work is just a means to subsist. It's not the end of goal. It's not the goal of life. So for people who want to understand this goal of life, so that is what Bhagavad Gita is all about. So people like that, the Buddhas, they cannot understand this Bhagavad Gita. And who are the Naradama? Naradama are people who are the lowest of men, or the lowest category of people. So for example, this is King Louis of France and Marie Antoinette of France. So example, these people, they were born rich, they were born as a king, but they were so cruel and they were so selfish and they were so hedonistic. They only thought about their own sense gratification. They will eat, they will have all kinds of parties, they will spend the money of the populace. And because of this, France became extremely poor. The people of France had no food to eat, nothing. Bad government. So due to bad government, the enemies, Germany, Spain, and Britain, they were all advancing their territories. And due to bad governance, poor supply of food, the people revolted and the French Revolution occurred, and these people were killed. They were beheaded by the guillotine. In fact, this lady, Marie Antoinette, the Queen of France at that time, she was so insensitive. They told her that your people, the people of France, are so poor that they have no bread to eat. And then this Marie Antoinette said, if they don't have bread, why don't they eat cake? So this is what she famously was said and captured. So they don't have money for bread, how can they afford cake? But she didn't care. So these are Naradama, people like this. So then there's Maya Paharta Jnana. Those are very intelligent people whose knowledge is stolen away by illusion. So there are, scientists and atheistic people. So like this Bertrand Russell and Adolf Hitler and Stalin, so things like that. So their knowledge is stolen away. Or Ashuram Bhavam. So some of them, like these people, they have the nature of demons. Just a moment. Okay. So then Krishna continues, Chaturvida bhajante mam. So in this verse, he says, but who are the type of people who will surrender to me, who will come to me? So he says, O best among the Bharatas, 4 kinds of pious men begin to render devotional service unto me: the distressed, the desirer of wealth, the inquisitive, and he who is searching for absolute knowledge, the knowledge of the absolute. So who are they again? Chatur Vida, 4. Chatur means 4 types. Vida, 4 types. Bhajante Mam, who will come towards me. So, and what will they do? They will take up this devotional service. So here I'm putting some pictures. Now we'll go through one by one. The first one is Arto. Arto means those who are in distress, or basically those who are suffering. So those who are distressed, they will turn towards God. So it's nothing like a good misery for people to forget them, to surrender to the Lord, right? So an example of this is Gajendra Moksha. This is described in the Srimad Bhagavatam. How this elephant, now this elephant wasn't an ordinary elephant. He was previously one of the devas, and he was cursed. And long story, but nevertheless, in this life he became an elephant, and he was a very powerful elephant, extremely powerful. And he had his family, he has his herd of elephants. But one day he entered this river, this lake, and in this lake there was a very powerful crocodile there. And this crocodile also so not an ordinary crocodile. In his past life he was a celestial, and he was also cursed. So anyway, it came that when he came to the lake to bathe, Gajendra, he was attacked by this crocodile. So when this crocodile attacked him, because the crocodile and Gajendra were both equally powerful, but on land, Gajendra is obviously more powerful. But in water, the crocodile was in its element, and he was slightly more powerful. And it seems they were struggling like this for thousands of years. This is in the previous ages. They used to live very long. And despite all his efforts, Gajendra could not save himself. And he found himself slowly losing. And he was being dragged further and further. And then his entire family, all the other family of elephants, they were all scared. None of them could help Gajendra. And in desperation, Gajendra raised his trunk, and due to some sukruti, some kind of blessings which he had in his past life, he somehow, in his greatest trauma, in his greatest misery, when death was at his doorstep, he was able to remember the Supreme Lord. And he remembered the Supreme Lord, and he uttered a beautiful prayer. And with his trunk, he plucked a lotus from that lake and offered that lotus in supplication to the Supreme Lord. And so genuine was the prayer of this Gajendra that the Supreme Lord immediately came. He came riding on Garuda, and he sent his Sudarshan Chakra, and that chakra immediately cut off the head of this crocodile. And the crocodile attained, he got liberated from his horrible situation, and again got his original position. And Gajendra was also blessed. So this is Arto, people who are in distress. Then there's Jignasho, people who are inquisitive. Inquisitive means they are curious. They are philosophical men, philosophical people. They are faithful people, and they just want to know more. I want to know more about it. So Jignasho, example, these are some of the sages in Naimisharanya forest. It said that at the end of Dwapara Yuga, after Krishna left the world, in the beginning of Kali Yuga, all the sages assembled in one forest called Naimisharanya. It's still there, the forest in India. And in this Naimisharanya forest, they decided to do a Maha Yagya. Many Yagya kunds were built because they wanted to cushion the effects of Kali Yuga, which is about to come. So they did it for thousands of years until the fire blackened their skin. And after that, then they wanted to, they felt that they were not going to be successful. Kali Yuga was still coming full force. And then they had Saunaka Rishi, one Rishi came, Saunaka Rishi, and he was very well respected. And everybody asked Saunaka Rishi, can you tell us what is the solution for Kali Yuga? And then Saunaka Rishi started to speak the Srimad Bhagavatam. This is how Srimad Bhagavatam came. And in the Srimad Bhagavatam, it's full descriptions about the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So this is example of Jignasho. So these sages in Naimisharanya are like this, curious, and they wanted to know genuinely, sincerely, what is the absolute truth. And then there is the next one, which is called Artharti. Artha Arti. Artha Arti, this one is an example of Dhruva Maharaj. We discussed this yesterday, Dhruva Maharaj's pastime. So Artha Arti, Artha Arti. Artha means desiring wealth or possession, some kind of material possession. So another type of person who will come to the Supreme Lord with faith is those people who are desiring something in return, karma kanda. They may also get there, like for example, many people go to Tirupati, they go and pray to Balaji, and they make Balaji their business partners, and then they, so they have faith, and in this way, somehow, by worshipping the Supreme Lord, they are benefited, because by worshipping Supreme Lord, even if they have karma kanda desires, simply by that worship, they get purified. and then they come to the higher level. So like this. And the last one is called Jnani. Jnani means one who is in knowledge. He is already attained that knowledge. So example of this Jnani is like the Sanat Kumaras. Remember last time I mentioned there are 4 sampradayas. One is from Lakshmi, one is from Brahma, one is from Rudra, Shiva, and the 4th one is from the Sanat Kumara. And this is the Sanat Kumara, the 4 Kumaras. Now these 4 Kumaras are the elder sons of Brahma. Brahma had children. He had many, many children. Narada is one of the sons of Brahma. But before, one of the earliest he had was Sanat Kumara. These 4 great personalities. And these great personalities, they were very learned. By simply hearing from Brahma, Brahma taught them about the ultimate truth. But they were not patient. They just accepted the path of jnana, because this is during that time they were capable of doing this. So they took up the path of jnana and they became extremely self-realized. But they were not devotees. And when Brahma told them, I want you to produce children so that we can populate the universe, these 4 Kumaras, they said, no, after hearing from you, we know the highest truth is actually to go to attain the supreme. And if you remember, one of the rules of the jnana path is to become celibate, right? Not to have not to have children or not to have sexual relationship. So the Sanat Kumara says, no, I'm sorry, Father. I want to take this path of this liberation, and therefore we will remain always children. We will take a child's body so that we will never have this kind of thoughts, and therefore we can be fixed in jnana. So that's why you can see this picture. They remain like children, but they are actually the oldest personalities in the world, next to Brahma. And they are one day, by their, they were free to roam all over the universe, even go beyond the material universe. So one day they came to Vaikuntha. Vaikuntha is where Lord Vishnu resides in the spiritual world. And they were coming to the doorstep, but they were blocked at the doorstep. They were stopped from entering. Who stopped them? Jai and Vijay, the 2 doorkeepers. If you go to any temple of Vishnu, you will see at the entrance of the gate or even the entrance of the altar, 2 figures. So they are Jaya and Vijaya. So they are the doorkeepers of Vaikuntha Loka. So they stopped them, said, no, you do not have bhakti. You are not able to enter into Vaikuntha Loka. This is only for those who have bhakti. Then the Sanat Kumaras, they were upset. Who are you to stop us? And then they started to curse them, curse the 2 Jaya and Vijay. And they told, because you do not know, you do not realize that we have attained mukti, we are already Brahman realized. How can you stop us? So you will become Asuras in your next birth. Now Jai and Vijay cannot be cursed by these people. They are Vaikuntha. Vaikuntha. Kunta means beyond misery. Why? That means where there is no miseries. So they cannot be cursed. But suddenly Lord Vishnu appeared. So he appeared right in the center of the doorstep, and he requested Jai and Vijay to accept this curse. Why? Because he wanted to have a win-win situation. He wanted to, because a curse of a Brahmana cannot be revoked, but at the same time, Vaikuntha Vasis cannot be cursed. So to satisfy both, and he also had he actually made this situation happen because he had a desire, Lord Vishnu. He actually wanted to have a Leela down on earth. So therefore, it happened that this Sanat Kumaras cursed Jai and Vijay, and Jai and Vijay were requested to accept this curse. And what was this curse? To go down to the material world. But Vishnu said, I will ensure that you only have 3 births. And when you take these 3 births, you will take then Vishnu told Jai and Vijay, you can either choose 1,000 births or you can just choose 3 births. The 1,000 birth as a devotee or just 3 births as demons. Either way, you will always remember me, Vishnu told Jai and Vijay. So Jai and Vijay said, yes, I want to be a devotee, but 1,000 births. And if I become a demon, since you said, Vishnu, that I can always remember you, this is no different from me. All I want is to always remember you. So let me be a demon. So since it's only 3 births, then I can come back to your lotus feet. So Vishnu tatastu, like that he blessed, and the Sanat Kumaras were also pacified. But you know what happened? While this was going on, the Sanat Kumaras, they were gazing at the lotus feet of Vishnu. And on the lotus feet of Vishnu, there were tulasi leaves, which were offered to the lotus feet. And the wind was blowing from Vaikunta, and the fragrance of these tulasi leaves, which were offered at the lotus feet of Vishnu, came to their nostrils. And simply by smelling this and by hearing the sweet words of Lord Vishnu, they had a change of heart and they completely developed attachment and bhakti. Bhakti bloomed within their heart. They were already liberated. And when bhakti bloomed in their liberated hearts, it quickly bloomed very quickly. And they became devotees, pure devotees. So that's how after that they started their own parampara, Sanat Kumara parampara. So this is Jnani. So these are the 4 types, right? One who is in misery, one who is in desiring something, and one who is inquisitive, and one who is Jnani, already realized, or one who is, really into looking for the ultimate truth. An inquisitive person is not the same as a Jnani. Jnani is someone who wants to know the ultimate truth seriously. So then Krishna continues, all these devotees are undoubtedly magnanimous souls. So he's talking about all of these 4. But he who is situated in knowledge of me, I consider to be just like my own self. Being engaged in my transcendental service, he is sure to attain me, the highest and most perfect goal. So here, Krishna is telling that to be the jnani is better than the other 3. So one may come in the beginning with these, but later on they can advance to this level, right? So that's the understanding here. So after many births and deaths, he who is actually in knowledge surrenders unto me, knowing me to be the cause of all causes and all that is. Such a great soul is very rare. And then he goes on with another verse. So, but this is up to, so what we have covered so far, let's see. We have talked about the topmost realization. We have talked about how Ishvara Parama Krishna, right? The Anadir Adir Govinda Sarva Karana Karna. We talked about the ultimate goal. We have talked about Krishna's supreme position. And we have talked about the type of people who cannot understand the Supreme Lord and the type of people who approach the Supreme Lord. Okay. And he goes on further from 713 all the way to 730, all about the different types of people who are able to understand and who go beyond. So we won't go through this in detail in this level, but here are the summary points. So we've talked about the intelligent, and he goes on talking about the less intelligent. Then he talks about the most intelligent. So this we will cover. So before we talk about that, there is one pastime which I'd like to just quickly mention. This is the pastime about Brahma Vimohana Leela. So Brahma Vimohana Leela, once Krishna and Balaram and all the boys in Vrindavan, they were having a picnic. And they were having so much of food stuff. And they were all eating. So in the beginning, the Brahma Dev and all the Devas, they knew that the Supreme Lord has come as Krishna in his supreme form, but they were sometimes doubtful, because Krishna will act in a certain way he's always mysterious. So he will act in a certain way to sometimes put them in certain doubts. So, for example, once when they were eating, Brahma came. He heard about all these pastimes and he wanted to come, and he wanted to see, is Krishna really the Supreme Personality of Godhead? So Krishna understood Brahma was thinking like this. He had a doubt. So he wanted to play a trick on Brahma. But at the same time, there's a lesson also he wanted to pass. So what he did, he took with his left hand the food which was eaten by his friend and put it in his mouth. So this is considered very barbaric. Usually we eat food with our right hand, right? This is Vedic culture. And we don't eat contaminated food. So if someone already touched the food and someone is already half eaten that food, it's considered not very cultured to take that food and eat it. So when Brahma saw the Supreme Personality of Godhead doing this, then he became confused. No, 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 no. This cannot be Brahma. This cannot be the Supreme Lord. I think this is a trick. But then Krishna did many, many things also. So Brahma was confused. So he thought, let me do an experiment. So what he did, he one day came and somehow he kidnapped all these boys. So Krishna went away to do something alone, and he took all these boys and put them to sleep. And then he brought them and kept them in a cave. And then this cave was in Brahmaloka, in his own abode, not on earth. He brought them to his own abode in Brahmaloka, and he kept them in a cave, and he put them to sleep. And then after that, he went back to earth to see what has happened. Now, the time difference between Brahmaloka and earth is such that even a moment from Brahmaloka is like a year has passed in earthly planet. So when Brahma left, when he came back to earth, he saw a year has passed. And when he saw in Vrindavan, all the boys were still there. The ones that he just kidnapped were still there on earth. So he became confused. Hey, how is that possible? Then he went back to check again, and then he saw that they are also there in the cave. But then he went back down to check on earth. They are also there with Krishna. All the cows, all the boys, all the children, they were all there. And then suddenly all these boys, they took the form of Vishnu. Many, 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 many Vishnus. And Krishna was there standing in the center. And when Brahma saw this, he became even more bewildered. How is that possible? So what actually happened is Krishna knew that Brahma took all these boys away, but he didn't want to disturb the pastime. So therefore, he expanded himself into all the other boys and all the other cows. So this is actually Krishna, he himself expanded. So therefore, and all these boys and cows, they came back and they played with the family, and the family, they became much more loving towards these expansions of Krishna than they were to their even own children. So when Brahma saw all this, he became bewildered. How is this possible? So, and then Krishna winked at Brahma. He winked his eyes on Brahma and then asked Brahma, why don't you come? So then Brahma became amazed. Oh, so then he came to Krishna, and Krishna asked, which Brahma are you? And when Brahma asked, when Brahma heard that, which Brahma am I? What do you mean, Krishna? I thought I'm the only Brahma. So Krishna then said, you don't know? Okay, let me call all the Brahmas. Then he called all the Brahmas, and there were thousands and thousands of Brahmas who came out, and many of these Brahmas had many heads. You can see this picture. Some Brahmas had 10 heads, some Brahma had 12, some Brahma had hundreds of heads, some Brahma had thousands of heads. So then when Brahma saw all the other Brahmas, then he thought, oh my goodness, he became completely bewildered, and he begged the Supreme Lord, please tell me what's happening. And then Krishna said, oh Brahma, you didn't know that there are many, many universes in this creation. This material universe is just one universe, and there is one Brahma in each universe. So you are the Brahma in this universe. But in other universes, innumerable other universes, there are other Brahmas. And these universes have different sizes. And according to the sizes of this universe, the Brahmas have different heads. So you can understand that you have 4 heads. So this universe is not a very big universe. There are other universes which are much, much larger. And therefore, the Brahmas there have much greater heads. So this was the pastime Brahma Vimohana Leela coming in the Srimad Bhagavatam. So then Brahma realized his position and what is the actual position of Krishna, the source of everything. And then he offered many beautiful prayers. So like this, Krishna goes on with chapter 7.29. So this will be the last slide for today on Bhagavad Gita. So he says, intelligent persons who are endeavoring for liberation from old age and death, that means those who are into trying to escape from these material miseries, they take refuge in me in devotional service, just like how Brahma also ultimately took refuge. They are actually Brahman because they entirely know everything about transcendental activities. So Krishna is telling the one who is following the bhakti path attains Bhagavan realization. That means they attain me because they take refuge in me in devotional service. And they are the highest in realization of the Supreme because they know everything about the transcendental activities. They automatically know Paramatma and they automatically know Brahman because these are all subsets of the Bhagavan personality. Okay, so the takeaways for today is from this chapter, knowing Krishna is the last word in yoga. Ultimate realization, the three realization, Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. And we also heard about how the Supreme Lord Krishna is the ultimate cause of all causes, Sarva Karana Karanam. And he is the ultimate controller, Ishvara Parama Krishna. And who can know Krishna and who cannot know Krishna. So that was also described. Remember the four types of people and the four types of people who can know Krishna and the four types who cannot understand the Supreme Lord. So we'd like to end today's session by just saying this is from the Srimad Bhagavatam, right? A little bit about chanting. Oh, how glorious are they whose tongues are chanting your holy name. Even if born in the families of dog eaters, such persons are worshipable. Persons who chant the holy name of your Lordship are understood as have executed all kinds of austerities and fire sacrifices and achieved all the good manners of the Aryans. Those who chant your holy name are accepted as having bathed at all the holy places of pilgrimage, studied the Vedas, and fulfilled everything required. So basically, this is in glorification of the chanting of the holy name, the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. It said that anybody can chant. No, there is no requirement. It's not like only Brahmanas can chant, or even if one is born in the lowest of all families, even in Ashuric families, even in the most non-Aryan type of birth one has attained due to their karma, it doesn't matter. They are still, if they chant the holy name of the Lord, they are considered to be worshipable. So then Krishna, this verse continues to say that it is understood that why they are worshipable, because they are chanting your holy name. And when they are chanting the holy name, it's understood that this is the king of all sacrifices. And someone who's doing this has attained all the pious credits from all the different activities which is described in the Vedas. So that's why in Bhagavad Gita also, Krishna in chapter 10, later he will say that amongst all sacrifices, I am the chanting of the jap, of the holy name. We will see that also later. So let us just chant the holy names of the Lord. Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Sri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. We'll chant this 3 times. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So like this, if we can chant 108 times with the beats every day, that makes up 1 round, right? So ideally, Srila Prabhupada, our Guru Maharaj, has told us that for initiation, we should chant 16 rounds. So that is the sadhana given by our Guru. Every day, this is the sadhana. But we can begin slowly. So ideally, we can start with 1 round. Okay? So this is the group quiz. There will be a quiz after this. I will send it in the link. Remember, we are group 2, right? And the quiz is necessary for the graduation and also for the certificate. And it will also help you to remember the whatever points that we've covered. And it also helps me to see who has, the attendance list, so that I can keep in track. So yeah, so if you want to order the kit, it's there, right? You can just scan this, or you can use this link, and the person will directly help you to send you the whatever that you're buying. Okay, so we can stop here, and we'd like to open for any questions if there are. Let me look at the chat. Okay, Aryan, there's one question. What does Aryan mean? So Aryan means civilized. simple translation would mean civilized. Okay, what civilization means, what are, it comes from the root word Arya. Arya means one who knows the absolute, the goal of life. That is called Aryan. So you remember I mentioned the Varnashram system, the Varna, the Brahmana, the Kshatriya, the Vaishya, the Shudra. So the society is arranged in such a way that the Brahmana guides all these other society classes, and they all work together in cooperation towards attaining the goal of life, which is basically coming out of this cycle of life, of birth and death. So that means Aryan. So one who knows this goal, whether he's a Brahmana, Kshatriya, Shudra, or Vaishya, these 4 are within this Aryan category. That is the meaning of Aryan. Okay. Any other questions from anyone?
Okay.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Yes, Kumar. Yes, Prabhuji. Thank you.
Thank
So
you.
if there are no questions, any other questions? Anyone wanted to ask anything? If there are none, then if anyone wants to leave, they can leave, while I'll just wait for another few seconds.
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you so much.
Hare Krishna. So thank you very much. Jai Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki, Jai Srila Prabhupada ki. I'll see you all tomorrow with chapter 9. Good night.
Thank you.
Hare
Good
Krishna.
night. Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna. Hare Krishna.